Welcome to the Story Tinker podcast, a place for in-depth analysis of stories, mainly from Webtoon. Co-hosted by sharp, witty, and dare I say, thirsty fans, we dive deep in every episode, analyzing character struggles, relationship development, and of course, theories. We also interview people working in creative industries. You can follow the Story Tinker on YouTube, podcast platforms, and social media. For bonus content, sneak peeks, and more, you can support the Story Tinker on Patreon. We're really appreciative of your likes, subscribes, follows, comments, and ratings on all platforms. Thanks for listening to the Story Tinker, and let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 110 of Purple Hyacinth, Oppressive Orders. And today we're with Fwoot and our new co-host, Joy.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, so Oppressive Orders. Yes, this is it's a different episode. We got a view of different people. So we start out right away, we have the setting. We're in the royal palace and we see two shadows. So we don't get to know who they are yet. And one shadow says, I had a delightful evening at Duke Canterbury's reception yesterday, Your Majesty. So one person that shadow is talking to is the Queen Lisbeth. And then we see another woman. We don't see the woman's face, but just see an elegant dress and the arms. You're right, it was a very interesting party. Lots of prominent attendees and some choice gossip about their trade deals with the South. I don't think they're a threat to your treaties with our friends in Cerren yet, but they're growing a little ambitious. But before we get to the woman, let's talk a little bit about some information that we learned here, because this is the first time we're hearing about a kingdom that's not 𝗪𝗪𝗪. Anyone have thoughts on that?
If Cerren is like a country based off like another real life country, I would guess France, because 𝗪𝗪𝗪 is based off London and Britain, and so you know the French and the British just have that rivalry.
Well, she has treaties with people in Cerren.
Yeah,
but yeah, and then these people who have the trade deals with the South could be a threat to this Queen's treaties with the Cerren, which tells me something, because ostensibly Queen Lisbeth doesn't have power, right? Because King Edward, right? Philip is the father, right?
Yeah.
So King Edward, right, is her husband. He's the one.
Wait, no. Philip is her husband. Okay. Edward is the dead king.
Thanks. And I was trying to remember E before FP, but whatever. So she's ostensibly just the wife. Like he's the one who inherited the position, so he's the one with the power. She's supposed to be just his wife, which is usually like just like a showpiece. But she's making her own deals, which confirms what a lot of us suspected, that she has a lot more power than she lets on, and that her husband is much more of like a weak figure, because she's making her own deals, and I bet you that her husband doesn't know about them.
Yeah, she's definitely a bit of a shadow leader, I guess, kind of like just doing stuff from like the shadows, which very prominent when she's introduced in episode 41, because Lisbeth is often shrouded in shadows. So also I saw the thumbnail for this episode when all the Fast episodes dropped, and I was like, oh no. And so like I saw that it was probably going to be I saw like that one panel where it's like, you're right, it was a very interesting party, and I saw like her hands, and I was like, oh my god, because I'm a huge Darcy fan. But I also saw this, and it was like, oh, she's working for the Queen, and I was like, come on, like, because the the Queen kind of sucks, and I'm like, girl, you can do so much better. But it's okay. I believe in the Darcy redemption arc.
Yeah, maybe she like. We'll probably discuss this later, but I think there's some hints that she may somehow have been kind of pushed into it, like she didn't have a lot of choice into it. And with the thing about Cerren, there's a part of me that wonders if that's somehow related to her background, whatever, because like she is of a noticeably different skin tone than all the other characters we've seen. So I don't know, so I wonder if she's got some sort of other ethnicity background, and that's either related to Cerren or some other country that they are dealing with as well. And that's how she can work so well as the queen spy or whatever it is that she is.
That's a cool theory. I didn't think about that. I assumed that they didn't talk about skin color in this comic, so I just assumed there was just like aesthetics. But if she's from a neighboring country, that would be interesting.
Yeah, race in 𝗪𝗪𝗧 is very much like not a very covered issue, and a lot of like and although like Purple Hyacinth does make like a lot of thematic parallels in its discussion of class to real life discussions of like race and class, because there is intersectionality, there is noticeably not a lot of intersectionality in Purple Hyacinth. So where in the real world, you know, race, class, gender, sexuality, you know, religion, all of these are like, and more, of course, all of these are like, you know, different factors that affect each other. In Purple Hyacinth, it seems to focus solely on class. So I don't know how much they'll use like race as a plot point, but I think it would be like really interesting if Darcy's family like was from a different like country, and we got to explore that, because I'm personally really interested in the world building outside of 𝗪𝗪𝗧.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so now we have a full shot of her. So we have confirmation, it is Darcy. She
looks so good.
You know, right? Beautiful outfit. I mean, just stunning. And
the hair. I saw the, like, in Soft's like story, she did a black and white drawing with the little side braid, and I love side braids, but you can't hardly see it unless you look closely because her hair is so dark.
It's true. Yeah, I didn't notice it till now. She does have nice braids.
It's very similar to the hairstyle she had in the party arc with the little headband of braids, but I think her hair was slightly different. But again, it's just another bun, and which is really interesting to think about, because the times that we see Darcy have her hair up are when she is supposed to be acting like regal and you know, very proper, and then when we see her hair down when she's with Bella, when she can be more laid back because this is someone that she knows, and it's very heavily implied that they have history and probably previously romantic relationship, with how Bella calls her darling or dear, one of the two.
And her whole posture is very differential. Like, her shoulders are a little bent. She looks like she's bowing forward a little bit. Her hands are crossed in front of her. So this is not like the confident Neyra that we saw with Bella. With Bella, she was like flaunting it in her face, right? And intimidating her. Here, she's the deferential one to the queen. So the power dynamics, queen has the power.
Yeah. She's definitely a lot more like stoic, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the queen obviously does rely on her. So there's a level of like trust and like acknowledgement of her intelligence probably. But yeah, the queen is boss. And she says, I see that impertinent old man refuses to learn. If he weren't funding half our army, I would have thrown him in the tower already. Yeah, that's the queen for you. It's just like, throw those people in the tower.
Most people in the tower because off with your head is unacceptable nowadays.
Yeah, so Duke Canterbury, he funds the military, which is interesting to me because I thought that like the government would be funding the military, but I guess not, unless he's like this prominent dude within the government.
I know in like feudal times, knights were wealthy because they had to provide their own armor and like training and whatever. So I think it makes a lot of sense for nobles to be funding the government because they're the ones who have the money. So
yeah, but like I don't know, I thought that if they were funding the government, it'd be through like general taxes, and then the government would just take all of that collective money and then just divide it up how they saw fit.
Taxes are relatively new, so I think that if we're in Purple Hyacinth times, with where they still have nobility, and I don't know if they implemented taxes yet.
Yeah, because I don't know, like their police system just seems like they have the police system for me implies like they have very much like standardized a lot of systems. So I don't know, it just stuck out to me that they were like relying on independent people to fund aspects of the government.
Yeah, so now she continues. There's something else, my queen. Elizabeth looks back at her with like a very suspicious expression. You know, very interesting. And she says, they mentioned partnering commercially with Viscount Redcliff. And they aren't the only. Is
it Viscount or Viscount?
I don't know. Viscount, that's probably like the French way of saying it. They wouldn't say the S, so whatever. Ignore me. I definitely pronounce things the French way, which is for sure the original way. And they aren't the only ones. Redcliff seems unusually popular in the upper spheres, and he's well liked among the people, right? So
I wanted to mention, because I remembered this earlier today, and I was like, oh, I have to mention this on the 111 podcast. But in the recap for season 2 that was posted alongside episode 106, we actually find out that Redcliff's first name is Albert, which is funny to me because I'm like,
it's not a very exciting
you cannot like be kidnapping children off the street to build your financial empire and also be named Albert. I feel like you gotta pick a struggle, you know, like you can't just do both, like but
yeah. It's like our cat is called Larry, and I'm like, why Larry? Like Larry is an old person's name, and this and whatever. So Albert is also like a very old-fashioned name.
It's funny to me too because Apostle 7 is most likely Redcliff, and like Apostle 7 has like really nice hair and clothes, horrible personality, but great looks, and it's just funny to me that that person is probably called Albert.
Maybe that's why he's compensating for his horrible name.
Yeah, he is. This is the reason why he's such a horrible dude, is because his parents didn't love him and named him Albert. But I found it interesting, Darcy's expression in this panel, and I may just be overthinking it, but she does look like a little bit more like paranoid, and I guess it's because the lines are a bit more scratchy in the line art here, especially like you see this around her chin, her nose, and underneath her eyes. And it's interesting to me because Darcy, because she has a relationship with Bella, who is in the Pantheon, Darcy probably does know about what Bella's experience was like within the Pantheon, and Viscount Redcliff was the dude who founded that group and also took Bella in as a child. And it reminds me of Darcy's comment to Bella about how she should know what it's like to want to escape, right? And so Darcy probably has this outlook on Redcliff that's not very favorable because she knows what his treatment towards Bella was like, or at least like how he used Bella, who was like a child, you know, to for his own financial gain. And she can't express that here, but it makes me like think that the reason she is so kind of like, or the reason she looks a bit more like paranoid here, or the lines are a bit more scratchy, is because she knows better than what she's saying right now, because she's saying that like Redcliff is super popular, but internally she knows that like Redcliff's a super bad dude and doesn't deserve that popularity. If that makes any sense.
I think so. Joy, what do you think?
I think I haven't seen a whole lot. It's like I like to see a lot of people before I form opinions of them. So I don't think I have a whole lot of thoughts right off. But whoever Apostle 7 is, there is something creepy about him. So
yeah, it was just weird for me seeing. Well, not weird. It was just like interesting for me. I guess interesting is a better word. Seeing this line from Darcy, because you know, because of her relationship to Bella, her outlook on Redcliff is going to be very different from, you know, the general public, because the public is probably gonna, or the public probably saw Redcliff as like this super virtuous dude, because he was like, and it was probably a narrative about like, hey, look at Redcliff, like he's this dude who took in a bunch of like orphans from Greatchapel and brought them up from the poverty they were in, you know, and he made them stars, you know. But that's just the public's look inward on the Circus Royale. Darcy has access to someone who was one of those children and who was you, and I think that just makes it more personal, because the public doesn't have that narrative that Darcy would get from actually knowing someone from the Circus Royale and actually knowing what it was like in the Circus Royale. And while we don't really actually know what it was like for Bella being trained to be Hestia, or what it was like for any of the other Circus Royale people, it is very heavily implied that there was a lot of like abuse, at least mentally, within that group. And we see that in episode 91, because episode 91 heavily implies a connection between Redcliff and Apostle 7.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that face could be interpreted that way that you're saying.
Mm-hmm. I did want to mention that it does seem that Lisbeth is sending Darcy to all these parties, right, to spy on people. And it makes me wonder if that is partially the reason that Darcy was sent to the New Year's party, because we knew previously that we thought previously that she was there because, you know, she was supposed to get courted by Will or something, right? But you know, who else was at that New Year's party? My boy Dakan, and who does Dakan have beef with? It would be Lisbeth, you know. So we kind of did lose Darcy after the first like scene of 87, when Will and Lauren went to the balcony to just talk. So I wonder what she was doing while they were chatting, you know.
Sleeping, admiring the architecture in every nook and cranny.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth has plans of her own, because she's like, well, perhaps it's time for us to get to know him better. He's throwing his annual ball soon. And Darcy's like, would you like me to attend? And she frowns, forgive me, Your Majesty, but will it still be held, considering? And she looks to the side, which is always a sign of suspicion. So is it just that she's like, well, considering what happened with the Phantom Scythe, with the blow up, or is it something else?
Yeah, there's a lot of ambiguity still about how much Darcy actually knows about the Phantom Scythe and whether like she's even in it herself. And like, does she know that Bella is an assassin, and does she know that Redcliff is Apostle 7? And has Bella told her that? And that's just stuff we don't really know at this point, because we haven't really looked into that, or we haven't had the chance to really look into that relationship yet, as it's still a fairly recent development within the story itself. So yeah, like, if she does know that Redcliff is Apostle 7, then it would make a lot of sense why she wouldn't really, or why she would be concerned about the ball being hosted, because, you know, the factory just happened. And while I don't know if the factory itself has been tied to Apostle 7 by the police yet, it is just in general like Phantom Scythe activity. And so a big event held by a big person within the Phantom Scythe is with a lot of like the royals, when the Phantom Scythe's goal is to take down, you know, the royals, is probably like just not a great idea.
And my theory is, I've always had theorized that the queen is somehow in the Phantom Scythe. So what if this is Neyra acknowledging between them that she knows all about the plan? You know, that she knows Apostle 7. If she's the leader, she knows all about Apostle 7 and his plans. If she's maybe another Phantom Scythe member, she happens to know about the plans. So this could be anything, right? It could be, like you said, just plain old dangerous for nobles, or it could be that she's got insider knowledge.
Yeah. So that makes me like really interested in her character, because we still don't really know that much about her. Like she's a very formal person, but I think like we were all kind of like very much shocked when the very like perfect noble woman that we met at the New Year's party just basically happened to have broken into the 𝗕𝗏𝗍𝗱𝗀𝗻's home and was waiting for her, just drinking tea. Like that was like, oh my god, like wow, she is not afraid of Bella.
Joy, do you have any theories on the queen or Neyra?
I'm not certain if I quite buy the queen being part of the Phantoms. It's like I can kind of get where you're going for if the Phantom Scythe is to try to overthrow the local monarchy, and she would, but like a lot of their cover story is like they use people in it. We gotta help the poor. They're not getting the attention that they need from the elites up above us, and she's been very explicitly like anti-poor, for lack of a better term. Like, so I'm not, but I think she's certainly keeping an eye on those developments because that is a threat to her power. I think she's keeping an eye to any threat to her power.
Yeah, I wonder if the deals with the South comment is about deals with the South Shore, because later on in this episode they do mention like the funds are going to go to build a hospital. So I don't know if it's like a South country or like actually the South Shore, and you know the South Shore, which is the area of Ardhalis that is primarily lower class. If that area is going to be invested economically by independent and third-party groups outside of the royals, and what Lisbeth thinks about that, you know, it's just
yeah. So the queen says, she stops and she says, oh yes it will. And
I'm sorry, that look that she gives is like, the ball better go through or I'm gonna murder the next person who cancels. Like, I don't know, that's what it says to me. Like, it's almost a threat that it has to go through.
Yep. And she turns around, gives her a cold smile, completely fake. Thank you, Neyra. Excellent work. You've been most useful to me. And she bows her head, at your service, my queen. And now we have this little boy, little Prince Arthur, runs up and like, mommy, mommy. Very cute.
I remember like there was a lot of like, oh, not a lot of, but like it was just kind of like a genuine like question about like what is like Arthur's relationship to Lisbeth, because he's like 9 or 10 at this point, and you know, Lisbeth is very cold person and not like a very like empathetic person, and so we were like, is she gonna raise this kid well? Because I feel like just having Lisbeth as a mother is already a red flag, you know. And there used to be some jokes about this, but like there were people who were like, yeah, Arthur is like the worst character in Purple Hyacinth. Has probably committed like 1,000,000 war crimes or whatever. But this episode just like changed everyone's view on him, and now he's like everyone's favorite.
Yeah, and he has like a maid, you know, watching him, which makes sense because, you know, royalties don't really take care of their children 100%, really. And he's like, look what I put in the gardens. Isn't this so pretty? And he's showing his mom. She does bend down, and you know, she gives him a little smile. He says, "Just like you, mommy." And she, you know, taps him on the cheeks. But congratulations, Arthur. It is a truly beautiful find. Menelaus are a very rare species, and it's a beautiful blue butterfly. And he said, Menelaus. You know, can't pronounce it. And the Queen's educated, right? It's a pretty obscure fact to know. And he's like, will you come watch the other butterflies with me? She rubs his head, smiles, and says, another time, my dear. I have a meeting to attend with your father, but perhaps Lady Neyra can take you. And he's like, looks at her, blushes. He's like, okay, do you want to come with me, Miss Neyra? So she treats him nicely, by the way. The mom does treat him nicely. So
yeah,
at least what we see.
I saw that, like the blush, and I was like, bro, I'm so sorry, but you're literally about to lose this woman to like a Phantom Scythe assassin. Like,
also, he's like, how old is he? Like, I don't know. He's like a tiny little kid.
Yeah, it's cute, but also, yeah, it's like it's like wholesome, but I also it's like really wholesome, but I also find it just so ironic that he's literally like his like competition in quotations in this is literally like a Phantom Scythe assassin, and who is probably going to end up in jail, and he's still losing, like. But this does lead me into my favorite one of my new favorite headcanons of a Darcy and Arthur like sibling dynamic, because one of my other favorite like headcanon relationships is Bella and Kieran's sibling dynamic. So I have a thing for the sibling dynamics, and I want Darcy and Bella to like adopt Arthur so he doesn't have to deal with his classist mom.
Right. Be interrupted by her.
Yeah.
Darcy's happy. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, looking at young Arthur, I don't know why. My first thought is young Will, but probably because that's the only other character that we've seen with blonde hair, blue eyes, and they all look alike. I don't know.
I think probably in the ideal world, my favorite character, in the ideal world, the character dynamics that I would want for Purple Hyacinth would be Arthur and Kieran third wheeling 𝗪𝗯𝗰. That is my perfect dream, you know.
You should write a fanfic about it.
I should. I really should.
Make your wish come true.
Yeah.
We're going for destiny to start its course.
The wonders of being an artist, you know.
So Darcy seems happy about that. She smiles, and it seems like a genuine smile. So it does seem like they have a nice, like you said, sibling relationship or older sister. I mean, she's obviously an older sister, but it does seem like she, you know, she seemed very cold before, but this does seem genuine. It does seem like she has a real affection for him.
And I guess it's because like even Arthur's like still a prince, so she does have to remain formal. But you know, he's like a child, so. And I'm glad that we get to actually like meet Arthur like this, because you know he's kind of he's been a relative background character, but he's so cute, like. And the relationship is so wholesome, and I love it, and it's definitely one of my favorite things to have come out of season 3 so far.
Yeah, so she's like, of course they're walking down the hall, and she says, "I see you built quite the charming home." So he put like a branch in there, and he's like, "Yes, but it hasn't." Go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to mention, Neyra calls Arthur my little prince, which could be like it could be just like he's short, but like you know, there is the like Little Prince book too, right? And I haven't read it, so I'm not really the one to make like a comparison thing about it, but I just thought it was interesting that we've got like Arthur, who's like the little prince, and then we've got Bella, who is the little match girl, which is another fairy tale, and then we've got Kieran, who is a Cinderella Kinney, because yeah. And I would even say that Kieran has been really like relating to Snow White lately, given how he got like knocked unconscious for a hot second and had to get Lauren's like I guess kiss of like true love to wake him up. I'm kidding, but like, and he also likes apples, but you know, but yeah, that was just something funny I thought about.
Yeah, actually, the line you make about the little prince, I heard that story. I don't think I read it, but I've heard it, and so that one is basically a pilot has lost all innocence, and he runs into this little prince, and he's this very innocent character, and he's just seeking for the meaning to life. And it's kind of a sad story with sort of a cliffhanger ending, but the whole story is basically about childhood innocence and like trying to find a meaning of life. And so that's kind of interesting that we have a little picture of innocence with this as well.
Especially, I'm looking it up now, but I read it but it was many years ago.
I googled it too, and a major people always ask on Google, it's like, what is the main message of The Little Prince? The main theme of The Little Prince is the importance of looking beneath the surface to find the real truth and meaning of a thing. It's the fox who teaches the prince to see with one's heart instead of just with one's eyes. Unfortunately, most adults have difficulty doing this. And you know who that reminds me of? It reminds me of our girl, Lauren Sinclair. So that's, I don't know if that was intentional, but you know, it's interesting to think about.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like Neyra has lost her innocence. So there's that.
Yeah.
So he's like, you know, yes, the charming home, but it hasn't moved much since I caught it. I think it looks sad. What do you think is missing, Miss Neyra? And there's this beautiful, striking image of her just looking at that butterfly with utter resentment, bitterness in her face. And she says, I
think like bitterness, yeah.
And she says, it's freedom, little prince.
And like, bro, that panel, oh my God, literally, like, I would become a 1950s housewife for her, you know? Like, yes, I do the cooking. Yes, I do the cleaning. I just need 5 minutes. Come on, please. But yeah, the panel it is very striking, you know, the blue and then the white of the like light behind them. And it is very much symbolic of Darcy's situation. And you really see this in the first panel where she's looking at the butterfly before the wing moves to not hide her face. And she is in the panel, it's framed where she is also inside of the jar alongside the butterfly. And, you know, Darcy is, she wants to escape, right? We don't know what she's trying to escape, but it's something. And, you know, it really, that prior motivation alongside, you know, this imagery with her in the jar and her understanding of the butterfly situation just really speaks that, like, she is the butterfly in this situation. Additionally, I would also like to point out that the butterfly is blue, and every time that we see Darcy in a professional situation or a formal situation, she is also wearing blue. So yeah, her dress here is a navy blue, and her New Year's party dress was also blue. So I that was just another parallel I just noticed between the butterfly and her.
Cool. We'll see if that continues. Very cool. So now we shift to the second part of this episode, and we have the royals having like a cabinet meeting essentially, and we see them through the window. Nice vantage point. As we were grimly reminded last night, the threat posed by the Phantom Scythe is more real now than ever. We have good reasons to believe that the weapons and nitroglycerin extracted from the factory are not the only ones they smuggled into the capital. And it's Dakan speaking. Our boy Dakan looking fine as usual. I like him. And the king asks any news from the spy master, who we've mentioned a couple of times before. So now we learn he's doubled our ranks, Your Majesty. The new agents were personally selected by the spy master and myself with the help of Chief Sinclair. So this is a lot of information, you know. Now we know that Dakan and Sinclair and Tristan have been working with the spy master. So this is more than we knew about Tristan, especially.
Yeah. At the beginning of this, one of my friends, when we were reading the episode together, one of my friends thought that the spy master was Darcy for a second. But then we were like, oh, wait, no, she's not. Because she was like, you know, reporting to the queen. So we were like, oh, that's kind of sus. Like, she was a spy master. She was the spy master that was mentioned in 68. But she's definitely a spy, but not the spy master. And, you know, the mention of Tristan being brought into this really makes me think about Raphael as the spy master. And I know a lot of people think that Raphael is the messenger, and I think he could also be the spy master, or one of my favorite theories, where Raphael is the spy master, but Athena from the Circus Royale is the actual messenger 7. But because the Hawks have relations to the Sinclairs, and, you know, Lauren was friends with Will, you know, it just, that's another tie that Tristan has to Raphael. And so it makes sense that because of that family history, they could like trust Raphael to be the spy master when they were recruiting for one.
Yeah, it's definitely intriguing, and you know, just adds more questions, more mystery identities. And we continue. Some of them are now successfully undercover with the Phantom Scythe. We see the whole table, and we expect reports from them shortly. And Lisbeth, the ray of sunshine, as usual, says, "We have no more time to waste waiting on your spies. Right hand, half measures won't be enough." And what do you suggest, Your Majesty? Now on, lower districts, especially the South Shore, will be placed under strict curfew and lockdown with in-out barricades to make sure no phantom sneaks past. And I want APD patrols tripled and anyone suspicious brought in for thorough investigation. Surprise!
Yeah, like it's giving like a parallel to IRL racial profiling, you know? So yeah, definitely targeting people because of their social standings, which is definitely a form of discrimination. And it's just ironic to me that we really have this notion that, you know, that the Phantom Scythe is made up of a lot of lower class people, which, yeah, it is. There are definitely a lot of people like Harvey who use the Phantom Scythe as an opportunity to just improve their situation, because it is kind of like one of the better opportunities that they have, and in doing so they can try to create social change. So I think Kieran says this, but like, even there are a lot of individuals who do join with like good intentions, but overall the group itself is still a terrorist group. But Kieran doesn't want to take down the Phantom Scythe as a whole. He just wants to take down the terrorists within it, because they're the ones doing the harm, and he's still able to sympathize with the reason that people join the Phantom Scythe. But that's a bit of a tangent. What I wanted to point out was that it's ironic that how the restrictions, they're putting restrictions on lower classes, but all of the like Snapdragon members that we have confirmed and all of the implied apostles that we know, so Apostle 7, they're all upper class people. So like Lauren's parents, Rachel and Alexander, they were decently wealthy as lawyers, and Redcliff has a financial empire. So I don't know, that was just funny to me that still the social hierarchy persists.
Yeah, I think it also has to do with like media perception. You know, whoever controls the media controls the narrative. Yeah. So I think, and she thinking she benefits from spinning this narrative of this revolution is a bunch of ragtag underling, like these ragtag paupers that want to overthrow a government.
Yeah.
Especially if my theory is she's part of the Phantom Scythe, so she definitely wants everyone to think it's the opposite of what she is.
Yeah, and so, Mindy, I'll get to that in a second, but we know that everything that is printed in the press has to go through the king first. So the royals do have very much an iron fist on the media. And while we don't know if the media silences reporters as much anymore, like it did under Redcliff, because several reporters went missing or were jailed under Edward's reign. You know, with Lisbeth still around, it's just hard to tell. But also on whether Lisbeth is Phantom Scythe or not, her morals and ideals do not line up with the core ideals of the Phantom Scythe, but it could be like a reverse psychology thing where she's kind of just faking it, I guess, to like drive people to the Phantom Scythe by making everything worse. She incentivizes people to you know, turn to the Phantom Scythe for help.
Yeah, and we just heard about her deals, so maybe she's benefiting financially from people's distress and terrorism going on.
Yeah. Also, I wonder how her crown stays on. Like, I feel like that thing should have slipped off, but maybe she just has like a million hairpins in there or something.
Yeah, it might have combs within the crown.
Oh, good point.
So now we have, I think this is Stefan, right?
I think it's Stefan, but I'm not entirely sure because he looks a little different here. I won't lie.
Okay, so maybe Stefan says, these phantom monsters have never pretended civility with us. I agree with Her Majesty the Queen. Why should we treat them better than the animals they are? We should spare no measures. All of the nobility is terrified right now, and Dakan cringes, rightfully so. Oh my gosh, so horrible. Like, just these people, or this person has like no respect. No respect. It's just horrible.
Yeah, and the line, we should spare no measures, all of the nobility is terrified right now, really just shows what the priorities are of these nobles, and that is themselves. They don't care really about the actual people of 𝗪𝗏𝗧 if the people of 𝗪𝗏𝗧 are someone who they don't like, rub noses with or something. I don't remember what the term is, but like, yeah. So basically, like, if you are in the South Shore, you are basically if you live in the South Shore, if you were born there, if you work there, I guess, like if your livelihood is in the South Shore, then you are basically considered a lower class citizen, and you are treated differently than other people in 𝗪𝗏𝗧, even though like you're most likely in the South Shore simply because you're just born there, right? It was roll of the die at birth.
Yep. And now this other person says, what about Redcliff's bomb? Wouldn't it be safer to cancel it for the time being? And Queen doesn't want that for whatever reason. Says, and give the phantoms exactly what they want. We shall not show fear in the eyes of our enemy, which is ironic because you're the one who just suggested like drastic measures. Isn't that showing fear in the eyes of your enemy?
Yeah, sorry, please go.
Guys, sorry. I just really think the way she keeps pushing that no matter what this ball has to go through, it has to go through. Of course, it's gonna go through. I am just really curious as to what she thinks she's gonna gain from this. Like, I think she's got her own ulterior motive. Besides, not like we're not gonna cower to the terrorists. That's what she's telling them. But as far as I really think, I get the vibe, and it's probably nothing more than a gut feeling. But I really get this sense that she has her own motives for wanting this ball to go through.
Maybe she likes dancing. Yeah, I totally agree. There's something with her, and I hope we find out soon because February 17th is soon. So
yeah. This is probably like, okay, so Cerren said that it was like January 24th and a day had passed, so this is probably like the 23rd or the 24th, depending like what he entirely meant by the 24th, because yeah, this is the morning or the day following the factory night. Yeah, and this honestly, like, keeping like the ball going just feels a bit like trying to like raise confidence in the situation, because honestly, like, okay, this conversation about like that they're having about how like we cancel it because it's just like too dangerous, it kind of just reminds me of like events that have occurred in the pandemic, and whether the conversation of like, is this even safe to be hosting, and people will be like, yeah, but like we want to show like confidence in the face of this challenge, and then it always goes wrong and it's a super spreader event. So
yeah, but there also seems to be a bit of elitism, like we're gonna impose all these rules and restrictions on the lower classes. Oh, but we, the upper class, we get to enjoy our parties.
Yeah, and that's very much true, because the pandemic, right? You know, billionaires made billions, right? While a lot of people suffered, and like economies like suffered, and a lot of people lost their jobs and lost families, and they were all impacted by the pandemic very brutally. But you know, the royals are able to keep life going on as normal, and that was a really good point, Joy.
Yeah, I agree, right? The upper class always gets their way. So, and then she continues and she says, besides, Redcliff's annual reception is one of the biggest fundraisers of the year, and the 𝗣𝘂𝗃 has publicly promised the funds to that pitiful excuse of a hospital on the South Shore. Isn't that what the low-lives our right hands so passionately defend have been begging for? I mean, she's saying something nice, and then she just like ends it with like the most horrible thing ever. Like she's just, she's portrayed as a very good villain. She makes us hate her. They do a good job.
So, it makes me wonder like what Redcliff's game is here, because it feels to me like he's trying to amass more popularity, but I feel like also like it could be taken as maybe he does actually care about like people in 𝗕𝗄𝗃, because I'm pretty sure he was from 𝗕𝗄𝗃, and he took in kids from 𝗕𝗄𝗃, and like it'd be, I don't know, because it's like very heavily implied that he did not like take in the children because he wanted to like care for them, rather he just saw them as an opportunity to make money. So I'm not entirely sure what he's doing with this, you know.
I mean, it would be nice, it would be more complex if he was like a mixed character. Maybe he started out, very idealistic and became corrupted over time.
Yeah, overall I don't think Redcliff is going to be a redeemable character though, just because of his treatment of like Bella.
He seemed like a real sicko. Yeah. Well, Joy, when we discussed that episode, I felt he had like sexual predator vibes with Bella. Did you get that impression?
Yeah, definitely. It was like, oh my goodness, he also has a history with her, and it wasn't good. And like, I would be scared for Bella being in the same room. I'm not so like, I'm sure that confidence that she was projecting was a cover, because like, if something did happen, I would not be like standing around and smoking and take off your mask and that kind of stuff. I would, of course, I'm a different personality probably from Bella, so, but yeah.
I felt like the Bella Redcliff / Apostle 7 relationship as something more like father-daughter like, to the point where like she just got comfortable around him as like a facade, because he did like take her in as a child. So I always saw that as like, he's technically like her adopted father, sort of, in a twisted way. But as for like that kind of relationship that you guys were talking about, I don't think Purple Hyacinth would go down that route, because they got to keep it like PG-13. But F in the past has mentioned that, if Purple Hyacinth was like a novel, I think she said this, that if Purple Hyacinth was a novel, they could go like a lot darker with it. And I think that is one of those aspects of Purple Hyacinth that might have gone darker. But because of webtoon rules and just trying to keep it more appropriate, I think it's gonna not venture into that territory.
Yeah. So Dakan continues and he's like, forgive me, Your Majesty, but I doubt that concentrating the drastic measures onto the lower districts while sparing the nobles any discomfort is what the people want. A hospital isn't the only thing falling apart on the South Shore. That revolution the Phantom Scythe promised 10 years ago is on our doorstep now, and unless things really do change, it will strike one way or the other. And not only Phantom Scythe, but your own people. And again, Dakan just fighting the good fight. King is listening. He is actually listening intently. I think the king is very redeemable. I mean, I think he's doesn't have a backbone, but I definitely think that he's trying.
this episode like kind of gave me, ironically, a little bit more respect to the king, because although we kind of know that he is being puppeted by, you know, the council and his wife, and, you know, his dad was like an absolute jerk, as we'll see in a couple panels, like he still like listens to Dakan a lot. And I don't know, I think like he could be a good ruler if it weren't for the fact that like the people around him kind of suck.
Yeah, well, I would think there's a reason that Dakan is his right hand in the first place and not any of those other people. I think he may have, and I'm not sure how they do those things in that world, but if Dakan was hired on like by appointment essentially, then and it's likely the king did see someone who actually would care and champion for the people that he's supposed to be ruling, and that's why he chose him to be the right hand. Although something that I saw in one of the table panels is when you see where the people are positioned, like the king's right hand proper is actually where the queen is, which, I mean, she's his wife, so technically that shouldn't be surprising, but I wonder if that's also sort of symbolism on who's really the one in charge of him. And I don't know. And now I'm also getting the picture of the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder for this guy.
That's a really good imagery.
Yeah. So for Dakan, he actually served under Edward, and so he was the king's advisor before Philip actually took the crown. And so I wonder if like you can swap advisors, but maybe in the tumultuous times that Philip took the crown, he might have just kept like his cabinet the same to really just keep like the level of change like down, and to make sure that like, you know, everyone who was already there could continue working.
Maybe, or this might be political factors where you can't fire them. Like, maybe they also fund a large part of the government. So.
And it's Dakan also like brings up what we talked about, how, you know, how bringing these restrictions onto the lower districts while sparing the nobles of discomfort, like how he doesn't think that's what the people want, right? And the hospital isn't the only thing falling apart on the South Shore, and that really spoke to me, because, you know, a lot of times people will focus on like one issue of a bigger issue, and once that one issue is solved, they'll just like, you know, just think that the entire issue is solved, right? When, you know, the issue of the South Shore is a much more systemic and classist issue, rather than, and it cannot just be fixed with one hospital.
Yep. Now Dakan is fighting, going upstream here, because his suggestion is met with, and will you be joining them, Lord Ramsel, since our suggestion seems so revolting to you? And Elizabeth, with a sneer on her face, says, you've corresponded with their leader in the past. Why shouldn't we believe you aren't still? And then this other person with mustache says, yes, those letters that Queen Lisbeth found in your office were damning. I'm surprised you're still allowed in court. Perhaps it was a mistake to let you return. And
yeah, sorry, read the next panel and then I'll give my thoughts on that.
And Dakan's like, I never corresponded with the leader, Duke Farnham. The leader sent us warnings before the Allendale tragedy, warning which all of you decided to ignore, a mistake which cost us the life of the late King Edward and more than 200 citizens.
Okay, so I'm like a little confused about which letters they're talking about, because we know, like, initially I thought that in between 68 and this episode, so 110, Lisbeth had gone into Dakan's office and found that one piece of paper with the Phantom Scythe stamp on it that we saw at the end of 68. But then the mention of like how the leader had sent us warnings before Allendale makes me think that's like a 10-year-old message, you know, that Dakan just kept around. So I'm a little confused on from when like that letter in Dakan's office is from, and also if the queen had, or whether that letter is like new or old, and whether it was found in between 68 and 110, or whether it was like already a known letter thing.
So, yeah, I think it's pretty clear that this particular instance they're referring to an old letter, but it could be that Soph and F are trying to trick us and into thinking that the 68 letter is this letter. Maybe it is. Maybe it is just the old letter we kept there, or maybe this is their way of throwing us off the trail and making us think it's the old letter, but really it's a new one.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think Dakan is like sus. I kind of go between he's part of the PS, although he's trying to like quell the terrorist part of it as much as he can. I'm between he's part of PS too. He's the leader of the PS. So that's just me. Of course, this is Purple Hyacinth. Pretty much any male character we see that's not the main point is possibly the leader. So at this point,
yeah, it's like I wonder if I wonder if Dakan is going to tell all of this to Tristan, like we saw in the New Year's party. But yeah, sorry, that was just a random thought, because like I'm still like, it was brought up yesterday, and so I was thinking about that theory where Tristan uses Dakan for information. So I wonder, like, if Dakan tells Tristan about this, is Tristan going to do something about it?
Yeah, well, we'll find out. So the king says, "So what do you suggest, right hand?" And Dakan pauses for a moment, sighs, and then we have a focus on just his mouth, because we know it's like a dramatic moment. He says, "A parlay." And everyone freaks out. We will never negotiate with the criminals. Outraging. If that doesn't show where his true allegiances lie. And the queen just looks at him with this ghostly pallor. She looks like a skeleton already.
And that reminds me of an old theory that I had about that letter in Dakan's office, which was, and Mindy, I'm pretty sure I told you about this. It was that theory where I thought that Dakan was trying to negotiate with the leader and to create a truce, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. The queen, that look over there. I don't know what this is.
I don't know. The thing is, I think from before, Dakan seems to have had some personal connection with the leader, because that was the first we've heard as to like I believe it was that past episode when he's talking with Tristan late at night. He was telling about, the leader was betrayed, and so he keeps an iron grip on a Phantom Scythe now. And when I initially heard that, I was like, that is a lot of information to have. Like, how do you even know this? So, unless you have some connection. So, I don't know. I'm still trying to sort through one Earth could find those connections with the Phantom Scythe be. Is he just keeping a close eye on them for national security? Does he have some personal investment? Is he part of it himself?
Yeah,
I don't know.
And it's definitely interesting because Dakan was best friends with Alexander Sinclair, who was an apostle, right? And they met in law school together, I'm pretty sure. So they could have talked a lot when they were, studying, and they would have developed a lot of similar ideas probably, and that definitely influenced how their outlook on life was. So
yeah, it would have been nice to see the connection. So King says silence, let him speak, which once again, he is an advocate. He does want to hear that point of view. And they're quiet, and he says, since its inception, the Phantom Scythe's requests have been in the interests of our people, improving their working conditions, access to education, healthcare. We all know that the Phantoms are not the first group to make such demands. Yes, obviously. Yes, some things have improved since King Edward's rule, but far from enough. Most of you have never ever seen what the South Shore looks like. You've never seen the beggars and dying children on its streets. And like this, the Duke Farnham, or that's the other guy, but the mustache guy is like, there are beggars in every kingdom, and none of our neighbors are showering them with presents.
Ironically, they're not showering their presents with presents either. So
heartless, man. So heartless.
Yeah, it really just shows that, like, you know, they don't see their lower class citizens as people.
Ridiculous. And maybe Stefan says, and you seem to forget that one of their demands is to put all the heads of us higher horns on spikes, not to mention overthrow their majesties and destroy the very structure of our society. And Dakan says, we are now on the verge of a violent revolution. The state's coffers are not as empty as they were under King Edward. The civil war will drain them much quicker than entertaining the Phantom Scythe's requests. I am suggesting a ceasefire while we can still avoid more bloodshed.
That's really interesting to me, because it reveals a new bit of information about Edward's rule, and that was like there was probably like a recession of some sort during Edward's rule, and I think that really like, and I think I mentioned this in the Purple Hyacinth server, but I've talked before about why I think Allendale was targeted by the Phantom Scythe. And before, it was like, you know, Allendale was kind of a symbol of what had been robbed from the lower classes in the lower class like individuals in the Phantom Scythe, who you know, like they probably built the station as they could be used as like lower classes probably built the station as like cheap labor. And Allendale was built in the first precinct, which is most likely a richer precinct, as it is bordered by Redcliff's, or the precinct with Redcliff's mansion, which is let me check. I think that's precinct 12 or 13. Precinct 13. It's precinct 1 is also bordered by the precinct with the Royal Palace, which is precinct 12, and then it is a little bit bordered by precinct 11, which is a relatively wealthy precinct, as well as that's where Lauren and Will live. And so it's like the closer you are to the Royal Palace, generally like the wealthier your precinct is. And so we can infer that precinct 1 was also relatively wealthy. And, you know, these people can buy cars if they need, and we see a car almost hit Lauren and Dylan at the opening of Allendale. And so, yes, public transportation is good, but I also wonder, like, you know, the funds that were used to build Allendale, where else could they have gone? Because we know that Allendale was a personal project of the king of the time, so Edward. But here we find out that the royals just were bankrupt at the time. And so, like, imagine being like lower class, and the recession would have definitely hit you hardest, and your king during this recession somehow finds the funds to build this really lavish train station for a group that, yes, will benefit from it, but will probably not benefit from it as much as if the funds were diverted to you know, helping out the South Shore, if that makes any sense. So yeah, even in a recession, the royals still find the money to screw over their lower class citizens. So
yeah, everyone is really upset. Like, do you hear yourself? This is absolutely insane. We can't possibly do this. And the king shouts, enough, all of you. I'm tired of your bickering. Lord Rhymesel's proposition is one to consider. But in the meantime, the measures proposed by the queen shall be made effective immediately. Duke Farnham prepare the army and ensure its readiness in case of need. Tell Chief Sinclair I want all district captains to make a public announcement tomorrow at noon. And the text is kind of fading out, and you just see the two main characters sharply while everything around them is blurry. We see Lisbeth, we see Dakan. She continues, make sure the measures are also on the first page of all major newspapers. And then we last see the queen tapping on her teacup.
Yeah, I saw some theories that the tapping was like Morse code, but I'm not entirely sure. What do you guys think the tapping is for? Do you think like she's nervous or?
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. It's like, I guess I can be a bit of a tapper. Sometimes people tap when they're impatient as well. Like, it's not always Morse code. It could just be tapping because of, like I said, impatience. I know, like in the factory, like we saw towards the end, we saw Lauren tapping her fingers, out of nervousness. And the queen is a little more composed. Like, maybe she's just sending the message to, like, some sort of message to Dakan, like, ha, I won this round because the king just basically ruled in my favor. So.
Yeah, I like that theory. I think it's also some kind of like showing that she's in control, because it's just focusing on her, and it's kind of like she's waiting for her plan to be carried out. You know, yeah. It's like the tipping tapping.
And the line Lord Rymesville's proposition is one to consider, but in the meanwhile the measures proposed by the queen shall be effective immediately, kind of just really goes to like emphasize the dynamic between Dakan and the queen, is that the queen gets her way and Dakan always almost gets his way, but not quite.
Yeah, and I kind of have some thoughts. It's like, I really think the king is trying to serve two masters here. Like, he's trying to appease both sides, but, you know, end of the day, he knows what's right to do, and he's gonna actually lead if he really wants to see any positive reform in his kingdom.
I think, like, the king is really hit by this issue, like, the most right now. That being that what the queen proposes and what the other members of the council propose are all very much aligned with the king's self-interest. However, Dakan is the challenger to that, reminding the king that he has actual people to look out for. And so the king is right now stuck in limbo between, does he choose himself or does he choose his people? And for us, yeah, there is the correct, we know what the correct choice is, but for the king, you know, it's a much harder because, you know, his community is very much the other.
Yeah, I don't know if it's by himself, but like, yeah, maintaining the fragile relationships with the people around him. Yeah. Like his whole cabinet, a bunch of classists, jerks.
Yeah.
So.
And the line bickering, just like, it reminds me of like children, and that's what they are. They're children.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's, you know, it's nice. This episode overall, it's just gives us a window into the country and how much the government really, except for Dakan, does not care, and maybe King Lisbeth does not care about the poor. So I'm curious, like, what's gonna happen? Like, how's this government gonna last? You know,
yeah.
What's the end game?
I think it's really interesting that we got another government episode, because the last time we got an episode like this was like 41, and we had 68, but it wasn't really as reactionary to events as 41 and 110, because 41 began the aftermath of the Tower murders by Cerren, and then this is not beginning the aftermath, but following in the aftermath of the factory. So both events were two very both events were two very like character relationship changing, like dynamic changing, because the Tower murders eventually snowballed into episode 43, and then Lauren calling off Fwoot in episode 50, and then with the factory arc, we got Kim and Will assuming Lauren dead and Loon overall just being assumed dead by the world.
Okay. Yeah, well, as always excited to see what happens next. Joy, do you have any final thoughts on the episode?
It was kind of interesting, like seeing some of the background and some of the stuff that has been talked about before, but now it's interesting to actually see it come into effect, and there were some serious changes, and oh my goodness, I would really love to see if there's a way for them to just replace their entire cabinet and fill it with more rhyme souls.
Yeah.
We just need to clone Dakan a few times, you know.
Will it be a better place?
Yeah, I really like the author's note at the end. People say they've never seen anyone blush in Purple Hyacinth. Well, now we've got the prince after 110 episodes, and I can feel that. Like, before. I relate to the prince. Like, I would blush for Darcy too, you know. Like, the prince and I, we are the same. Like, forget to relating to other characters. I think the prince is the only right answer. But I did want to mention that Darcy's position within the royals, it kind of makes a lot more sense of Bella's princess comment, because it does seem like she has Lisbeth's favor. And although she may not be like actually royalty, she is, it seems like she's been kind of taken in by the queen, you know, and by like Arthur, you know. And that makes me wonder a bit, because there's this line that Apostle 7 says about how it would be a shame if that Darcy's girl upset, or if that girl like upset you again. And that's a line from episode 91, and it makes me wonder, like, oh hey, like what did Darcy do to like upset Bella? And I wonder if, because there was like a bit of a time jump, so like in their relationship, so like this would have happened about 2 years ago probably. I wonder if that would have been Darcy getting taken in by the royal family, because especially in this episode you see like how the royals and the nobility treat the people of the South Shore. And where is Bella from? You know, the South Shore. And although I don't think Bella is like super like motivated by like classism, or like by just the overall like fight between the royals and the PS, I think that this attitude that the royals have towards the people of the South Shore is personal for her, at least for Bella, because, you know, she was one of those orphans in Grey Chapel who lost her parents. And, you know, maybe if the royals perhaps took better care of their citizens and the government was more efficient and less classist, then maybe she wouldn't have ended up in the situation where she is today. And so I could see a lot of bitterness towards the royals, but she's definitely not the kind of person like who Kieran is, where it's like, you know, there's like, it's a nuanced issue, like, you know, it's systemic or whatever. Like I could see Bella just killing the royals out of revenge, you know.
Makes sense.
And yeah, so that betrayal, or the thing that upset her, would have been Darcy getting taken in by the royals, because it would be Darcy aligning herself with the very group that is the catalyst for why Bella's life turned out the way it did.
Yeah, that would be a nice betrayal. Good point.
Yeah.
Dramatic.
And I could also see this betrayal as a way that Apostle 7 could have kept Bella in the Circus Royale or in the Phantom Scythe, because it does motivate her further against the royals, you know, that betrayal, that bitterness. Because there is kind of a question, like, you know, how has Bella not killed Apostle 7 yet? Like, what is he doing to like keep her from killing him? And I think it could be like him capitalizing off her anger and spite towards the royals.
Okay, that's a good theory. Well, I am sure that we will get answers at some point. A while. But thank you so much for joining. And Joy, thanks for joining for the first time. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, great evening.
All right, thanks for having me.
Sure. Okay, bye, see y'all.
Bye. Good night, Mindy.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much to my current patrons: Susie, Lady Libris, Lily, Jenny, Haley, Molly, Veronica, Emily, Jo, Rochelle, Saucy Tuggles, Meg, Ann, Rose, Priya, Alexa, Misty, Laura, Joanne, Patty, and Milta, Esther, and watching people Taurus, Poppy Seed, Marie, Jen, Emily, Jean, Jen, Erin, D, Kay, Lily, Beckett, Duranda, Christine, Sadie, Kelly, Daniel, Louisa, Nessaldo, and Kaylee. Your support is truly appreciated.